I didn't recognize where we were going. This wasn't a part of the city I had any reason to visit, and when the car finally slowed and stopped in front of a building that looked more like a private residence than a restaurant, I felt a flutter of nervousness that had nothing to do with the anticipation of seeing Nathan. This was a world I had only read about, a world of memberships and reservations and private clubs where the wine list was longer than most novels, a world where beautiful people gathered to see and be seen, to network and negotiate and form alliances that would shape the economic landscape of the city. I had never belonged in that world. I had spent my entire adult life in cubicles and conference rooms and the kind of ordinary restaurants where the tablecloths were plastic and the menu was laminated. But tonight, I was going to try to fit in. Tonight, I was going to pretend I was the kind of woman who dined in private clubs and knew which fork to use for the fish course and understood the difference between a Bordeaux and a Burgundy. Tonight, I was going to be someone else, someone more polished, more sophisticated, more worthy of Nathan Reed's attention. The restaurant was intimate, only 8 tables, each one separated by silk curtains that created the illusion of privacy without sacrificing atmosphere. The lighting was low, amber, flattering. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money, and the kind of culinary ambition that resulted in dishes named after their creators. Nathan was already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark suit that fit him like it had been tailored specifically for his body. He stood when he saw me, and the look in his eyes, appreciation, desire, something that might have been wonder, made my breath catch. "You look stunning," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "Thank you," I said. "You don't look so bad yourself." He smiled. That slow, transforming smile again, the one that made him look 20 years younger, the one that suggested he was genuinely delighted rather than merely performing social niceties. A wine waiter appeared almost immediately, and Nathan ordered a bottle of red wine. I didn't recognize something French, something expensive, something that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. When the waiter left, Nathan turned his full attention to me, with an intensity that made me feel like the only person in the room. "So," he said, "tell me about Victoria Newman, the real one, not the professional, not the mother, not the wife. You." The restaurant was intimate, only 8 tables, each one separated by silk curtains that created the illusion of privacy without sacrificing atmosphere. Nathan was already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark suit that fit him like it had been tailored specifically for his body. He stood when he saw me, and the look in his eyes, appreciation, desire, something that might have been wonder, made my breath catch. "You look stunning," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "Thank you," I said. "You don't look so bad yourself." He smiled. A wine waiter appeared almost immediately, and Nathan ordered a bottle of red wine. I didn't recognize something French, something expensive, something that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. When the waiter left, Nathan turned his full attention to me with an intensity that made me feel like the only person in the room. "So," he said, "tell me about Victoria Newman, the real one, not the professional, not the mother, not the wife, you." I took a breath. "I'm not sure I know who that is anymore," I admitted. "I spent so long being what everyone expected me to be, the good daughter, the reliable student, the dutiful wife, the attentive mother, that I forgot to ask myself what I actually wanted. I woke up one day and realized I was 34 years old, and I had no idea who I was outside of my relationships to other people. And now I'm trying to figure it out," I said. "I'm trying to decide what I want from my career, from my marriage, from my body, from my life. I'm trying to understand whether it's too late to start over, or whether I still have time to become someone new." Nathan nodded slowly. "It's not too late," he said. "I didn't become VP until I was 38. Before that, I was just another guy in a cubicle, wondering if I would ever amount to anything. I made a decision somewhere along the way to stop being invisible, to start demanding the life I wanted instead of accepting the one I was given. And it worked. Is that what you think I'm doing? Demanding a better life? I think you're a woman at a crossroads, Nathan said. I think you're standing at the intersection of who you were and who you could become, and you're trying to figure out which way to turn. I think you're lonely in your marriage and hungry for something more, and you're starting to realize that the something more you've been chasing might be closer than you think. The wine arrived. Nathan poured us each a glass, and I took a long sip, letting the warmth of the alcohol settle my nerves. He was right, of course. He was right about everything, and that was both exhilarating and terrifying. What do you want from me, Nathan? I asked. Really, not professionally. What do you want from this? He set down his wine glass, looked at me with those dark, assessing eyes. I want to help you figure it out, he said. I want to be the person who shows you that it's not too late, that you can reinvent yourself at 34 or 44 or 54. That desire and ambition and hunger aren't things to be ashamed of. They're things to be cultivated. I want to be the man who sees all of you, Vic, the professional and the woman, the mind and the body, the past and the future, and I want to see where that takes us. That sounds dangerously like a relationship. Does that scare you? I thought about it, really thought about it, about my marriage, which had calcified into routine, about Michael, who loved me in a distant, reliable way but had forgotten how to make me feel desired, about Derek, who had been exciting but ultimately hollow, about Tyler, whose love felt too pure for the complicated woman I was becoming. I thought about what it would mean to pursue something real with Nathan, not just an affair, not just an escape, but a genuine connection with a man who saw me and valued me and made me feel alive in a way I had forgotten was possible. Yes, I said honestly, it scares me, but I think I'm done being scared. I think I'm done letting fear make my decisions for me. Nathan reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm, firm, certain. Then don't be scared, he said. Be brave, be reckless, be the woman you've been trying to become, and let me be there with you. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. We left the restaurant together, Nathan's hand on the small of my back, guiding me through the private club and out into the cool night air. The black sedan was waiting, and we slid into the back seat together, thighs touching, the air between us charged with possibility. My place or yours? Nathan asked. His voice was low, intimate, a velvet rasp that made my pulse stutter. Your place, I said. I didn't want to explain to my neighbors, didn't want to explain to myself, didn't want any of the complications that came with bringing this new version of myself into the apartment on Coldwell Street, where I had lived as the old Victoria for so long. Nathan gave the driver an address, and we pulled away from the curb, merging into the late-night traffic of a city that never fully slept. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him, the solidity of him, the reality of this moment that I had been building toward for weeks, without fully admitting it to myself. He lived in a high-rise penthouse overlooking the river, all glass and steel and modern furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city lights reflecting on the water. It was the home of a man who valued aesthetics, who surrounded himself with beautiful things, who had designed his life to be as controlled and impressive as his professional persona. But there was warmth here, too. A fireplace with a real wood mantel, books lining one wall, not decorative volumes, but actual well-worn spines with cracked covers and dog-eared pages. A kitchen that showed signs of actual use, not a showpiece, but a working space where someone cooked and ate and lived. I like your home, I said. It's more of a showcase than a home, Nathan admitted. I spend so much time at the office that I never really invested in making this place feel lived in. but maybe that could change. Maybe, I said. He led me to the living room, where he poured us each a drink whiskey, neat, the kind of drink that a man drinks when he's trying to slow down and think clearly about something important. I took the glass and sipped, and felt the burn of it settle warmly in my chest. "Vic," Nathan said. He set down his own glass and turned to face me fully. "I need to be honest with you about something, okay? I'm not a good man," he said. "I've done things in my life that I'm not proud of. I've used people. I've manipulated situations. I've taken what I wanted without thinking about the consequences for anyone but myself. I have a reputation, and most of it is earned." "I know," I said. "Everyone knows. But I'm trying to be different," he continued. "I'm trying to be better. And when I'm with you, I want to be better. You make me want to be the man you deserve, not just the man I am." I looked at him, this powerful, flawed, complicated man who had built his life on ambition and desire and the willingness to take risks, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not the hot, urgent wanting I had felt for Derek. Not the desperate, unrequited ache I had felt for Nathan's attention. Something deeper. Something more like recognition. "I'm not a good woman either," I said. "I've been selfish. I've manipulated situations. I've taken what I wanted without thinking about the consequences. I had an affair with a younger colleague because my husband stopped touching me, and I let myself be chased by a boy who loved me because it made me feel desirable. I've been using my body to get what I want, and I've been telling myself it's empowerment when really it's just desperation." "We've all got our demons," Nathan said quietly. "Maybe that's why we found each other," I said. "Two broken people looking for something to make us whole." Nathan stepped closer, reached out and cupped my face in his hands. His touch was gentle but certain, the hands of a man who had learned to take what he wanted, but was choosing, in this moment, to be tender. "I don't want to make you whole," he said. "You're not broken. You're just unfinished, a work in progress, and I want to be part of the next chapter." I kissed him. It was the most natural thing in the world, our mouths coming together with a hunger that had been building for weeks, for months, for longer than I was willing to admit. His hands slid from my face to my waist, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around his neck and let myself fall into the kiss with a willingness that surprised me. We didn't make love that night. It wasn't the right time. We were still in the early stages of something that felt too important to rush, too fragile to force. But we lay together on his couch, wrapped in each other's arms, talking until the sun came up about our fears and our ambitions and our hopes for the future. And when I finally fell asleep in his bed, with his arm draped over my waist and his breath warm against my neck, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt at home. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. The next 3 months were the most intense of my life. Nathan and I continued our work relationship. I stayed on his team, direct report to the VP, with access to the executive floor and the inner circle of operations that I had spent years trying to penetrate. My career was accelerating in ways I had never imagined. I was attending board meetings, contributing to strategic decisions, being consulted on matters that had previously been reserved for senior leadership. The other executives noticed. Some of them were impressed. Others were resentful, suspicious of how quickly I had risen, whispering about favoritism and affairs, and the age-old equation of female ambition with female sexuality. I ignored them. I had bigger things to think about. Nathan and I were building something real, something that went beyond the stolen dinners and the late-night conversations and the electric pull of attraction. We were learning each other, learning each other's fears and foibles and the small daily habits that made us human. I learned that he took his coffee black and read the news every morning with a thoroughness that bordered on obsessive. He learned that I hummed while I worked and got cranky when I was hungry and needed 12 hours of sleep to function at my best. We argued about inconsequential things. where to eat, whose turn it was to choose the movie, whether the thermostat should be set to 68 or 70, and we made up in ways that reminded me why I had wanted him in the first place. But nothing is perfect. Nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Michael called me one Sunday afternoon while I was at Nathan's apartment, and the sound of his voice, familiar, distant, weighted with the accumulated disappointments of a marriage that had been dying slowly for years, hit me like a cold shower. He was coming home for 2 weeks at the end of the month. He wanted to talk about us, about Oliver, about what happens next. I told him I would be ready. But was I? Could I look my husband in the eye and tell him that I wanted a divorce? Could I explain that I had fallen in love with another man, my boss, no less, and that I intended to pursue a relationship with him? Could I face the judgment of my family, my friends, my colleagues, the entire social ecosystem that had defined me as Michael's wife for 6 years? Nathan found me on the balcony after the call, staring at the river with unseeing eyes. "What did he say?" he asked. "He wants to work on things," I said. "He says he wants to try again. He says he's sorry he hasn't been present, that he wants to come home and be a real husband again." "Do you believe him?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to. Part of me has spent so long dreaming of exactly those words that I don't trust my own reaction to them. But another part of me, the part that's been waking up next to you, the part that's been learning what it feels like to be truly wanted, that part knows it's too late. That I've already moved on, even if I haven't said the words out loud." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he came to stand beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched, and he said, "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to try with Michael, I'll understand. If you want to walk away, I'll be here. I won't pressure you, and I won't make this decision for you. This has to be yours." "How can you be so calm about this?" I asked. "Aren't you worried I'm going to choose him?" "No," Nathan said simply, "because I know what we have is real. I felt it. You felt it. And real things don't disappear just because the timing is complicated. If Michael is what you need to feel at peace with your choice, then take the time you need. I'll wait." I looked at him, this man who had waited for me, who had been patient with me, who had seen me at my most ambitious and most vulnerable, and had chosen to stay anyway, and I felt the last of my doubts begin to dissolve. I chose Nathan. Of course, I chose Nathan. But the conversation with Michael was still to come, and it was going to be the hardest thing I had ever had to do. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Michael arrived on a Tuesday, and I went home to the apartment on Coldwell Street to meet him. I had packed a bag over the weekend, a few changes of clothes, toiletries, enough to suggest I was staying with a friend without actually lying. I had rehearsed what I was going to say, but when I walked through the door and saw him standing in the kitchen, looking tired and older than I remembered, all my prepared speeches evaporated. "Vic," he said. His voice was neutral, careful, the voice of a man who had been rehearsing his own speech. "You look different." "I am different," I said. "I've been different for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to admit it." We sat at the kitchen table where we had planned our wedding, our pregnancy, our future. We talked for 3 hours. I told him about Nathan. Not everything, not the affair, not the details, but enough to make him understand that I had found someone else, someone who saw me, someone who made me feel alive in ways he had stopped trying to. Michael listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rage or weep or threaten. He just sat there, absorbing it all, his face cycling through emotions that I couldn't fully read. "I thought we could fix it," he said finally. "I thought if I came home, if I tried harder, if I was more present, I thought we could go back to what we had at the beginning." "We can't," I said. "Neither of us can. We've both changed too much. We're not the people who got married at 28, Michael. We're different now. And I think that's okay. I think we can acknowledge that we loved each other, that we built something together, and that it ran its course. What about Oliver? Oliver will have 2 parents who love him, I said. That's not going to change. We'll figure out the custody arrangement together. He'll still see you every other weekend and holidays, and whenever you want. I promise. Michael nodded slowly. He looked older than his 37 years, worn down by the weight of this conversation, this ending. I loved you, he said. I know I wasn't good at showing it. I know I got so caught up in work and distance and all the things that seemed important at the time that I forgot to prioritize the one thing that actually was. But I loved you, Vic. I still do, in a way. I just don't think it's enough anymore. No, I said. It's not enough anymore. But it was, once, and I'm grateful for that. He left the next morning. Back to Houston, back to his job, back to the life he had built without me. I watched his car pull away from the curb and felt a complicated mixture of grief and relief and something that might have been hope. I had done it. I had ended my marriage. I had chosen myself, my happiness, my desires, my future, and I had done it with honesty and integrity and as much kindness as I could muster. It was the bravest thing I had ever done, and the scariest. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Nathan was waiting for me when I got back to his apartment. He took one look at my face, the exhaustion, the tear tracks I hadn't realized I'd left, the fragile determination that came from having just done something impossibly hard. And he pulled me into his arms without a word. He held me while I cried, while I shook, while I released all the fear and doubt and second guessing that I had been holding back. And when I finally stopped, when I was empty and raw and more vulnerable than I had ever been in my life, he tilted my chin up and looked into my eyes with an expression that made my breath catch. You're free, he said. I'm free, I repeated. It sounded like a revelation, like a promise. Then let me be the first to welcome you, he said, to the rest of your life. That night, we made love for the first time. It was nothing like I had expected, not the hot, urgent collision I had imagined during those weeks of longing, not the transactional exchange that had defined my affair with Derek. It was slow and tender and achingly intimate in a way that made me feel completely exposed and completely safe at the same time. Nathan touched me like he was memorizing me, like he wanted to know every inch of my body and every sound I made and every shiver and sigh that passed through me. And I touched him the same way, learning him, worshipping him, giving myself to him with a fullness that I hadn't known I was capable of. Afterward, we lay tangled together in his bed, the city lights casting patterns on the ceiling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I felt something settle into place inside me. Something that had been out of alignment for years, maybe forever, had finally clicked into position. I love you, I said. It was the first time I had said those words to anyone but my son. I love you too, Nathan said. I think I have since that conference room, when you stood up in front of a room full of executives and told me my budget was broken. You were so brave, so certain, and I thought, that is a woman I need to know. I laughed, and the sound surprised me, light and genuine and full of a joy I had forgotten I was capable of feeling. I was terrified. I know, he said, but you did it anyway. That's what made it beautiful. We lay there in comfortable silence for a while, and then I said, I'm going to have to tell people about us, about what I'm doing with my career, with my life. People are going to judge me. Let them, Nathan said. People always judge. It's what they do with the judgment that matters. You can let it define you, or you can let it roll off your back and keep moving forward. And what about you? I asked. Your reputation? Your position? If people find out about us, then they find out, he said simply. I'm not ashamed of you, Vic. I'm not going to hide you or pretend we're something we're not. If the board has a problem with it, they can discuss it with me directly. I've survived worse rumors. I turned to look at him, this man who had built his career on power and control and the willingness to take risks, and I felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost hurt. He was willing to risk his reputation for me, for us. That meant something. That meant everything. Thank you, I said, for seeing me, for waiting for me, for being patient with me while I figured out what I wanted. Thank you for being worth the wait, he said. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. That was 6 months ago. A lot has changed since then. I left Meridian Holdings not because of the relationship, but because Nathan encouraged me to. He said I was too talented to spend my career in a corporate finance department, even one as senior as operations. He said I should be building my own empire, not managing someone else's. So I left, and I started my own consulting firm, specializing in financial modeling for healthcare acquisitions, the exact specialty I had developed working with Nathan. It's terrifying and exhilarating, and nothing like I imagined my life would look 3 years ago. I work from Nathan's apartment some days and my own apartment other days. I take business trips to cities I've never visited and stay in hotels that cost more per night than I used to earn in a week. I dress differently now, more designer, more intentional, more aware of the message my clothes send before I even open my mouth. I am becoming someone new, someone I am still getting to know. Oliver is adjusting. He's 4 now, bright and curious, and increasingly aware that his parents don't live together anymore. Michael calls him every Sunday, and I drive him to Houston for 2 weeks every summer and every other holiday. It's not the family I imagined when I got married at 28, but it's a family. It's real, and it's ours. Nathan and I are still together. We haven't moved in together officially, but I keep a drawer at his place, and he has a toothbrush at mine, and we spend most nights in the same bed. We argue about stupid things, dishes, thermostat settings, whose turn it is to book the vacation, and we make up in ways that remind me why I chose him. He is not a perfect man. He has flaws, demons, a past that will never fully release him, but he is trying to be better, and so am I. I think about Derek sometimes, and Tyler. I wonder where they are, what they're doing, whether they ever think about me the way I still occasionally think about them. Derek was a stepping stone, a bridge between the woman I was and the woman I became. Tyler was a warning, a glimpse of what pure, unspoiled love looks like, and a reminder that sometimes love isn't enough. Neither of them could have given me what Nathan gives me. Neither of them saw the full picture. Neither of them made me feel like I was worth the risk of changing everything. But I also know that I wouldn't be here without them. Without Derek, I never would have discovered that my body was something worth celebrating. Without Tyler, I never would have understood that I deserved to be loved for who I really am. Without Nathan, I never would have believed that I could have both the curves and the competence, the beauty and the brain, the love and the career and the life I had always wanted but never dared to imagine. And now I stand in front of my mirror every morning, not the bathroom mirror on Coldwell Street, but the bigger one in my new bathroom, the one with the expensive frame and the integrated lighting. And I look at the woman looking back at me. She is still Victoria Newman, still 34 years old, still a mother, a daughter, a friend, a professional. But she is also something else now, something new, something that is still being written. She is no longer invisible, and she never will be again. Love, quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. I think about the woman I was 6 months ago, sitting in that empty conference room at 7 p.m., wondering if anyone would ever see her. I think about the question she was asking herself, the same question I am asking myself now, at the end of this story, at the beginning of whatever comes next. How do I get the VP to notice me? The answer, I have learned, is not about the clothes you wear or the curves you display or the elaborate strategies you devise to position yourself in someone's orbit. The answer is simpler and more complicated than that. The answer is, become the kind of woman who deserves to be noticed. Become the kind of woman who knows her own worth, who pursues her own ambitions, who refuses to settle for a life that doesn't fulfill her. Become the kind of woman who walks into a room and commands attention not because of what she is wearing, but because of who she is. I became that woman. Not overnight, not without struggle or fear, or the kind of soul-deep uncertainty that makes you question every choice you have ever made. But I became her, and now I am her, and I am never going back to being invisible again. So if you are reading this and you are a woman who feels unseen, a woman who has spent years dimming her light to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable, a woman who has forgotten what it feels like to be wanted for more than just her body or her usefulness or her ability to keep everything running smoothly, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not too old. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are exactly the woman you need to be to start over. And the world is waiting for you to stop being invisible. All you have to do is decide that you are worth seeing, and then become her. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. I think about the first time Nathan Reed walked past my cubicle and didn't look at me. I think about the months I spent crafting a strategy, perfecting a look, building a version of myself that was bold enough to demand attention in a world that had taught me to be invisible. I think about the nights I lay awake, wondering if I was doing the right thing, if I was betraying my marriage, my son, my own sense of who I was supposed to be. I think about the mornings I stood in front of the mirror and rehearsed confidence until it felt real, until the woman staring back at me actually believed she was worthy of something more. And I think about the day I finally understood there is no single answer to the question of how to get someone to notice you. There is no magic formula, no perfect outfit, no combination of body language and strategic positioning that guarantees results. There is only this, the decision to stop waiting for permission to exist, the decision to stop apologizing for taking up space, the decision to become so fully, completely, unapologetically yourself that the people who are meant to see you have no choice but to look. I made that decision once, in a conference room, in front of a room full of executives, when I opened my mouth and said the thing that everyone else was too afraid to say. I made that decision again, months later, when I walked into Nathan Reed's office and told him the truth about who I was and what I wanted. And I make it every single day now. In every choice I make, every risk I take, every moment I choose to be visible instead of invisible. The VP noticed me, but that was just the beginning. The real victory was learning to notice myself, to see my own worth, my own power, my own capacity for transformation. The real victory was understanding that I was never invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to shine. That moment is now, and it's always now, and it will never not be now. For as long as I have breath in my body and the courage to keep becoming. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. So here I am, at the end of this story and the beginning of the next one. I am 34 years old, a mother, a daughter, a lover, a professional, a woman who has learned that she is allowed to want more than she was taught to want. I am standing at the window of my new apartment, smaller than the one on Coldwell Street, but brighter, more mine, watching the sun set over a city that suddenly feels full of possibility. Oliver is asleep in his room down the hall. Nathan is flying back from a business trip in New York and will be home by midnight. And I am here, alive, present, visible. I got my VP to notice me. But the real story was never about him. The real story was about me. about the woman I had to become before I was ready to be seen. And that woman is still becoming, still learning, still shining. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories.